Illinois faces some big challenges. Today, you're about to hear a truly honest analysis of the problems we face. Equally important, you'll also hear an in-depth discussion of some practical solutions. This is your radio source for stories, the insight, and the answers you won't hear anywhere else, not in the media, and not coming from Springfield. You're listening to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project. Now, here's your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Welcome to another edition of Illinois Rising. Dan Proft, co-host of Chicago's Morning Answer, AM 560, weekdays 5 to 9 a.m. with Amy Jacobson. Joining me on this installment is Ted Dabrowski, the president of WirePoint.com. Ted, thanks for joining us. And
Thank you.
As we look ahead to next month and the seating of a new governor and a new General Assembly, we've got a number of new members of the General Assembly on both sides, smaller group on the Republican side overall, much smaller. But some of the new Republican legislators have already filed paperwork rejecting their pensions. They're not signing up for the pension program, trying to lead by example, novel concept. Obviously, that doesn't address $130 billion in unfunded liabilities, but the symbolism as well as the substance of state legislators saying, I recognize it's a part-time job. I recognize the General Assembly has been so asleep at the switch we can't even properly fund the General Assembly's pension fund. That's the worst funded of all. And lead by example so maybe we can get other public sector unions to the table to have a discussion about prospective pension reform, even with a Democrat governor, even with Democrat supermajorities in the General Assembly.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for them to opt out. Tom Morrison had it right when he ran for office back, I think, in 2010. He said, I'm in a major conflict if I'm taking a pension and then say I'm going to reform pensions. There's no way that these guys and gals can think about reforming pensions when they're, being enriched by those pensions themselves. So I think the first step to getting pension reform in Illinois, that's one of them. And it shows that they're serious about ending this pension crisis by starting with their own.
And one of the individuals who did that, Darren Bailey, along with some of his newly minted colleagues, Blaine Wilhauer, Dan Calkins, these are all new Republican state legislators from Southern Illinois. And Darren Bailey joins us now. Darren, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
The opportunity.
So why did you make the decision to opt out of the pension that's provided to state legislators?
Well, the whole time my life of serving on church boards and school boards and community boards, I mean, the system, the organization is only going to be as good as the leadership. So we have to begin taking a top-down approach to things, and it just makes sense that you lead by example. So, Illinois is obviously in crisis mode, so what do we do about it instead of telling other people what they should do? This seems obvious that this is what we do as leaders, and we set an example, and we start a process. So that's the top-down approach is definitely why I chose not to accept this.
Well, so you and some of your Southern Illinois colleagues are new to the scene in Springfield, or you're going to be in a month. And the problem it's always seemed to me is the Republican Party can't speak with one voice on this. You've got a number of Republican legislators who have opted out of the pension, and now you're adding to that, which is good news. But do you think the party, the caucus, the House and Senate Republican caucuses, should take a position that as a caucus, that's our position, and members shouldn't be taking this pension shouldn't exist, and if we lead by example, then we may have a little bit more standing in the public's mind and the public sector unions' minds to talk turkey with respect to pension reform of all of the state's 5 pension systems?
Absolutely. There's no doubt the Republican Party is in trouble, and this last election simply proved that. So we have to begin to stand for something. It's interesting. We have, party leaders and older affiliates telling us to quit leaning so hard to the right that we must adjust and lean to the left. Well, we have another party in the state of Illinois that does that. So we have to we've got to stand for something, and we've got to speak up. We've got to be bold. I opted out of the health care, and my personal health care cost for me and for my wife and I is pushing $30,000, and that's ridiculous. And man, if you don't think the temptation's not there to do something different, well then it was. But to opt out of that and to again set an example and maybe to prove that maybe you need to kind of have your house in order when you run for a position like this, because if you've got your house in order, then you can obviously bring more to the state. But if you're going to come to the state and run for a position in the legislature and be dependent on the state, I don't know. Maybe that therein lies some of our problems as well. But so the Republican Party needs to have some backbone. We don't need to adjust our platform. We need to be as conservative as we've always been, but we need to speak up and we need to engage the voters and what I still contend and believe is out there, the moral majority.
Now, Darren, I certainly commend you for what you're doing, and I think the big challenge is how do we get more people on board. Now, at Wire Points, we did a review of how many legislators, the current ones, not including you guys who are coming on, there are 50 lawmakers who had already rejected pensions. So that's almost a 30% amount, which is pretty good. And included in that list were not only guys like Tom Morrison and Jeannie Ives, and let's call it the people who are fiscally conservative, but Andy Monar was on there too, and some other Democrats. What can you do? I mean, it's not that crazy to think that you could get to a 50% plus in terms of people who opt out. Now, that doesn't mean that they would vote for any legislative pensions, but what do you think you can do to lead that effort and push it more? Because it's not like you're the only one doing it, so there's a chance there. It's a dream maybe, but it's a chance.
Well, what I hope to do is exactly what I was able to do last week during the week-long training session in Springfield, which was, I'll admit, was very good. The Legislative Research Unit puts that on, and we're all new. All of the new freshmen are in the room together, representatives and senators, and you just have, I was very purposeful in engaging literally everyone there, Republican and Democrat, and especially the Democrat, making sure that when we had meals, when the meeting began, that I wasn't over here in my own little huddle, but I was engaged with members on the other side, and I handed them my business card, and I just literally begged them to please take me up on an offer. Come down to Southern Illinois. My wife and I will put you up in our house. We'll feed you. I want to show you what life looks like in Southern Illinois and why it is imperative that we get our state in order. So when you begin this process of a face-to-face conversation and you begin to work together, as I assume we will when we begin to get in session, then you begin this process of finding what we have in common, which, interestingly enough, literally everyone that I met, there was that one or two things that we did indeed have in common. So we focus on that, and then from that, we begin to develop trust. We begin to develop respect, of which is obviously lacking right now in the House. And when that happens, genuine conversation, genuine sharing of ideas begins, and I believe we've got a shot at that with this new class coming in. I really do, because I was hearing a lot of the everyone knows that Illinois is in trouble, and the question is, how do we go about solving that? And we through this conversation process, then we try to show them why we can't keep spending money and why we can't keep giving things away. We have to do something different than we've done before.
And the center of gravity has shifted in the Republican Party in this state to the extent that it still, is anything more than a legal fiction. The majority of Republican legislators in both chambers are downstate, and we got largely swept out of suburban Cook and the Collars. There's a few left, but just a few. And I wonder if your conversations with your Central and Southern Illinois colleagues get to the idea of downstate Republicans exerting themselves to lead the party where suburban Republicans have frankly failed.
Yeah, I think so. I think that day of reckoning's coming. I think, we're going to see what happens these next 2 years. We're going to be as influential as we can to get the other side of the Republicans, on board, and again, we have to do business differently than we've did it before. So, you've got something, in my opinion, unique. You've got You've got men and women coming from downstate who have have literally been out in the, for lack of better words, the blue collar world, who have been, been busy with business, who have been plagued with all the drawbacks of Illinois business law and everything else. And so we're fed up. We've literally lived it. It's not like we've lived the consequences. We've seen it firsthand, and that's we're going to have to hopefully be given that respect of that our ideas aren't just to sit down and shut up and play ball. And I definitely see that as being proposed. This is the system. This is what we do. This is what we've always done. And I can see that message there. So I guarantee you, downstate Illinois is going to buck that. And but that places a lot of responsibility on our shoulders as well, which I believe wholeheartedly we can handle. We've got to engage. We've got to come up with ideas, and we've got to keep that message out there. And that's our voters down here trust and believe that we can and will do that. So that is a weight on our shoulders that we do have to carry. But yes, we've been meeting, we've been talking. The friendships so far are solid. That union, that pack is solid. So hopefully we can go up and gather more on that train.
He is State Representative Darren Bailey, one of a new crop of Southern Illinois Republicans coming to Springfield come January. Darren, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for what you're doing, and Ted, thank you for all the facts that you constantly share and the hard work you're doing.
Thank you
very much.